Getting the job done right is the goal of every home builder and homeowner. As a member of our building community, All Access will become a trusted resource for every stage of your building and renovation projects. Plus, we're constantly adding new project guides, videos, articles, expert tips, and more for members only, because there's always more work to be done. Sign up now or give a gift to another builder at finehomebuilding.com/allaccess.
We are starved for tradespeople in this country. I mean, well, it's easier to get an audience with the Pope than to get a plumber to show up at your house right now, and more useful too. And I can say that as a Catholic.
Welcome to the Fine Homebuilding Pro Talk Podcast, our regular discussion with building industry professionals. This is Senior Editor Patrick McComb. Today I'm joined by Tom Bodett, former builder and president and co-founder of HatchSpace, a woodworking shop, teaching space, and gallery in Brattleboro, Vermont. You can find the Fine Homebuilding Pro Talk Podcast and the original Fine Homebuilding Podcast at finehomebuilding.com/podcast. You can leave feedback and ask questions there too. Tom Bodett, it's such a pleasure to have you on the program. Thank you.
Well, it's great to be here, Patrick. Thanks for having me.
I think it's safe to say that most folks would recognize your voice and name not from your work as a home builder, but from the years and years you've made commercials for Motel 6 and your regular appearance on National Public Radio. How does one go from building houses in Alaska to doing commercials and radio work?
That happened a long time ago, but it's a happy story. I was happily building houses in Alaska, first Petersburg, Alaska, and then Homer, Alaska, which is where
You couldn't
I live.
find a colder, more miserable place to build houses?
No, there were. I just didn't go there. Though that's the banana belt of Alaska, by the way.
A lot of rain, though, right?
It was kind of rainy, yeah. Building there was a real challenge. The building season was short, so everything was in a hurry. Most of the materials were shipped out of Seattle or Portland. In Petersburg, we lived on an island. Everything came by barge, and you would have to order your entire house and have it packed in these containers that would be brought up on a barge, and then you would spot these containers on your building site and just hope that when you open the door, it wasn't the carpet pad and kitchen cabinets that you saw first, and that it might actually be the rebar and other things that you needed.
So were there lumber yards that would actually pack the containers for you, or was that handled by a separate entity?
No, there were. I used Georgia Pacific down in Bellingham, Washington. They were my main supplier. They had a regular sort of routine. They were used to it. There were a few the large sites like that who did similarly. So there were some options in that way. Seattle was our big city, if you will, even though it was a 3-day boat ride to get there.
That must make it really hard to plan. You'd have to really have your ducks in a row, I'm guessing.
It was, and I was a young meathead. I had no idea what I was doing, and trying to, part out a house and not, you couldn't over order too badly because, you had to make some money. But if you under ordered, you were literally screwed because there was very few options. There was a local lumber yard that just had gouging prices, very poor, picked over, materials. And so you had to nail it. I keep you can tell what I've been doing all my life. Listen to my
your metaphors.
My metaphors. But the trick was getting it timed right. You had, of course, people come to you, with their house plan. If they had one, that would be lucky. Then you get the house figured out. You get all of their selections figured out, all their finishes and everything. Then you sit down and you make your shopping list, which is the entire material list from the rebar that goes in the foundation all the way up through, like I say, the carpeting and vinyl on the floors.
Anything memorable you forgot that like really left you stranded?
Um, well, it wasn't a forget. It was, I built this huge house, which was a chalet style house, and the peak of the chalet was like 32 feet off the living room floor. It was a huge room, and the front was all glass and all this angled glass, and um, huge thermal pane windows, like 4 feet by 6 feet. And I custom ordered them all from Seattle, and they came, and I had the angle wrong. and I already had the front framed in. And
So do you wait for new windows or do you reframe the front?
No, there was no, you did not do that. I mean, waiting for new windows meant, okay, next season.
Yeah.
That's just kind of the way things worked.
How did you handle that oversight with the client?
I'd blame someone else, I'm sure. I had to pay for it. I mean, basically, and I had to pay local retail to have. Luckily, the way the windows were wrong was they could cut what I had. The angle was steeper than the one I needed, so they were able to sort of cut the angle down on those at a local glass shop, which meant, of course, they had to break the thermal seals and seal them and all that. And they were nothing but problems from then on. And that's why I moved from Alaska.
So how did you get from that, right, to doing radio and commercials for Motel 6 and many other places, I'm sure?
Well, I'd always wanted to be a writer. I went to college for about 18 months at Michigan State, but dropped out to go out west and seek my fortune, and ended up in Alaska, and ended up doing a number of odd things: logging, fishing, cannery work. And then I fell into construction, and it was the boom years, the pipeline. I went there in 76 and 78, they turned on the pipeline and just sprayed money all over everybody. And, everybody gets a hospital, everybody gets a school, everybody gets a senior home, everybody gets a bridge to nowhere. It was just like that. And the Forest Service opened this huge region in the Tongass National Forest, where they're bringing in 80 families, all to live in Petersburg, where I lived at the time, a town of 1,200 people on a remote island. And they all needed houses to live in. And I just happened to, I was working with an older man I was like in my early 20s. He was in his 40s, so he was like the wizened old man. He said, there's no licensed contractors on this island. And to get a license in Alaska at that time, a contractor's license was just, I think it was a $10,000 bond or $5,000 cash deposit. So I had put some money away with my fishing and other work. And so I put down a cash deposit, and Johnson and Bodett General Contractors was the only licensed contractor on Mitkoff Island when the National Bank of Alaska, the only bank in town, said they would not finance any homes that weren't built by a licensed contractor. So
that seems like a boon to business.
It was pretty good. And we had so many houses to build. The number I remember is 23. And and we had to start in like May, and we had to be finished by like November. They all had to be ordered, designed. They weren't all custom homes. A lot of it was. I said I wasn't building houses. Let me just say I was building housing. There's a little bit of a difference.
Yep.
Same motions, maybe a little different level of quality. But and it was crazy. It was like the work environment is now. You could not find help for anything. I used to meet the ferry when it docked because all the, college kids on their summers and the hippies, like I had been a few years earlier, wandering off with their backpacks. And I would meet them and just bribe them basically with beer and promises to come and work because I just needed bodies. And if you could hold up a hammer and somebody knew what it was, it's like you're hired.
You're foreman.
I mean, it was the Wild West. It was so much fun. It really was. Even though I was tearing my hair out almost every day, I was young enough to manage it. And I don't know where I was going with that story, other than to say that it was a great time to be a builder in Alaska. And then a few years after that, I moved up to Homer, which was mainland Alaska, if you will. It was on a road system to Anchorage, 220 miles, which was more like living in civilization again. You could actually drive up there and buy some things, if your materials didn't arrive intact. There were better options, a bigger market, all of that. But then the oil crash happened in 1984, which took the price of oil down to nothing. And Alaska has an inverted economy. When things are booming in the lower 48, it's usually because fuel prices are down. And that's when Alaska suffers because it's like 80% of their economy. And so, you know, when the lower 48 was in the middle of that the recession, from 76 to 82, Alaska was booming because the price of oil was through the roof. If you remember that, the Arab oil embargo, all of that fueled all that boom. So that ended just as quickly as it started. And I found myself scratching around for work like everyone else, doing the bathroom remodels and everything you had to do to pay the bills month to month. So I was kind of losing my as BB King says, the thrill is gone. Um, and and I started looking for other options, and somehow maybe because I had a little more time on my hands, I started writing these little pieces. I sent a couple up to the Anchorage Daily News, just funny little personal essays. One about quitting smoking, another one about having my dog castrated. Lovely little, slice of life stuff. And a buddy of mine who worked for the local public radio station called me one day after seeing one of them in the paper, and he said, you should do that on the radio for us. Have you ever thought of that? And like everyone else in the world, I still hate the sound of my own voice, and I thought, no, I don't think that's something I'd like to do. But anyway, he talked me into it. I did it. And people liked it. Everywhere I went, people said, "Hey, Tom, I heard you on the radio. So that was funny. You're going to do another one of those." So I did another one of those and then another one. And it ended up being a weekly thing. And a producer up at the Alaska Radio Network, who were also airing them, sent it down to All Things Considered, one of my reels with about 4 commentaries on it. They aired the very first one on the reel, and the next thing I know, it's like I had a book contract. I had advertising agencies calling me. Motel 6 agency called, and they had never advertised in their history. They were founded in 1962. This was now 1986. And they asked me if I'd be interested. And I said, I don't know, I'm just kind of a house builder, public radio guy, but what's something like that pay? And he told me, and I said, okay. And then I asked him, well, why me? And He said, "Well, you sound like the kind of guy who stays there." And I do, and so, that was how many years ago now?
Do you still
35.
work for them? Do
I
you
do,
still?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. In fact, I have another session, tomorrow, for them.
So
Yeah.
do you still like working on houses now that you're a famous personality? Do woodworking? You mentioned before the show
Yeah.
that you have a shop somewhere behind you.
Well, working on houses, like, is a strong word. I do work on my own place. It's my golf, if you will.
Hmm.
And I it took me a long time before I could hire a carpenter to work on my own
Because
house.
you
It
didn't
was
trust them?
No, it was a matter of pride. It was kind of like a
Uh-huh.
man, I came to my dad was not a carpenter. He was like a refrigeration engineer. Um, and I grew up in this old house that he was remodeling from my first memory until I left home. Um, Inch by inch, I mean, he jacked up the house. We put a new foundation under it. We built a kitchen onto it. We put in a new heating system and tore out the old boiler. I mean, it was constant.
Did you
Um,
enjoy that, or did you find it like you wanted to be like other kids whose dads weren't tearing the house apart every weekend?
well, I mean, everyone wants their dad to like them. So I became, there was 6 of us, but I was the only one who really kind of showed up every Saturday morning to help.
Hmm.
And, because that was the only time you could get time with dad, right? Is if you were working with him. So I did that, and I didn't appreciate until years later that um, he had no idea what he was doing. He was making it up as he went. He didn't come from carpentry. He never had a single class or a job in it. Yet he did all of this stuff. He figured out, the plumbing, sweat joints, the wiring, all of it. And I never in my life at home saw a service person in our house. Never a plumber, never an electrician. He could even fix our television. He would take the back off the TV. He would set the hallway mirror up against the sofa so he could see the picture. Then he'd reach his arms in the back and start fiddling around until he get the picture fixed. You know how they used to flip and do all this stuff. And and so I grew up just thinking that
That was
that's
normal.
that's what guys did,
Yeah.
Dads just did that. That was part of our job. And so when I, you know, got away from building every day um and busy and had enough money to actually hire somebody to do some of the work that I'd been doing, it was hard. It was hard to sort of give it up. You know what I
Hmm.
mean?
Yeah.
It was, yeah, it felt like cheating somehow.
It kind of is, Tom.
Yeah, I know, but I got used to it. So what I do now is I pick the plums, if you will. Like, if we remodel the house, I'll pick like an archway that I want to build, and I'll say that to the contract, I say, I'm going to build the archway. Or I'm going to make that door. So I'll pick, the parts of it that I want to do and enjoy. But as far as like slinging plywood and hanging sheetrock and insulation and all that, oh please, no. I'm
I've
quite
said it
happy to.
before. The home building, fine home building brand like tends to over glamorize residential construction, and sometimes it's just like backbreaking work for hours on end. Right? It's not an easy thing to do.
That's right. It's not easy, and until you get to the finished part, it really kind of is a long series of dull little jobs, and it's part of what I enjoyed about it, because like you're going to nail down a deck, so you just sort of put your game face on and you get all geared up and you just start nailing, you get that rhythm going. And if you're working with another guy or a crew, everybody's working together. That's fun. I mean,
It is.
I enjoy that. And I miss that sometimes. But some of it, like crawling into a crawl space on your belly to fix the black iron drain pipe under an old bathroom. Oh no, I don't
Yeah,
miss
that's
that at
miserable.
all.
I learned from a regular FHB contributor, Mason Lord, that you were at a recent timber framing event presenting. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, I have a lot of good friends involved with the Timber Framers Guild. one of my best friends here in Vermont, Beaufort, is their current board chair. And I've spoken at a couple of their events. Timber framers are um, very much akin to furniture builders, which is what I do now for
Mhm.
my my woodworking fix. I've been building furniture now for like 30 years, and I just in the last few years was a co-founder of a local woodworking school and community workshop. So it's kind of what I do these days. And the Timber Framers Guild is kindred souls. I mean, they have that same as I'm sure you well know, that same value of craftsmanship and the tradition of that trade. And, if you really look at what a timber frame is, it's a giant piece of furniture. I mean, the joinery is the same,
Yep.
and everything else is just huge. And
I would challenge someone to tell me it wasn't just the most beautiful thing too, right? It is a joyous experience to be in a frame, right?
it is, it really is, and the whole process of building it. I built the room I'm sitting in here. This is a three-story barn. The top story only is timber framed. It's 48 by 32, and I myself and two friends cut this frame. It's all red oak and black cherry, and it's I came out here before we even lived here, and we bought the house, and I was building the shop, and my studio's on the top floor, and then my wood shop's underneath, and I call my tractor barn is on the daylighted basement level. It's where I keep all the tractor and all my lumber and all that stuff. But anyhow, the frame was it was my first hardwood frame, for one thing. I'd built some frames out in Alaska, which is all spruce and cedar. And so it was a very different experience doing those mortises into a piece of red oak. Uh,
And carrying them too, right? I
right?
bet the beams are way heavier.
Way heavier. And I mean, they're 8 by 8 posts and rafters. I'm looking around trying to remember all this. Um, but it was wonderful, and I didn't really know anybody here. The two guys I was working with, I knew, um, and they said, "Well, we should put out the word for a frame raising party because we're going to need help put this frame up." We had a guy with a boom truck going to come by, but you always need those hands.
Sure.
And so I said, "Well, how do we do that?" And they said, "Oh, we'll just, you just put up a couple signs, frame raising." And we did it, and there's like 40 people showed up. And many of them are, of course, friends to this day. And they didn't just show up for the bologna sandwiches and the beer. They actually worked. People
Hmm.
came with tools and slings and all the stuff. They'd done this before. And I've since been a part of several other, frame raisings of other friends. And it's just a wonderful, wonderful way to put a building up. Uh, it's like the opposite of where I started in the construction business.
It seems like for the people who attend that, it is an experience that few people get to now and nowadays, right? The joy of helping someone put up a building, and then at the end of the day, you get to look back and stare at it, and working on something communally is a wonderful thing.
Well, and the shared sense of accomplishment from that is powerful, and um, part of my devotion to the craft of woodworking on whatever scale is my recognition that that feeling is becoming increasingly absent from our lives. That sense of community, that sense of agency of the things that we own and the things that we have. Uh, our digital lives have given us the illusion of being more connected than ever, but it actually just sort of atomizes our social lives to uselessness. And um, I compare it to I don't know if you're familiar with the Moth Storytelling Project.
Yes.
True stories told live. It's been around for a long, long time, but in the last 10 years, it just I mean, it just went crazy with popularity. Like they announce a Moth main stage event and it sells out like a Springsteen concert. People just can't get enough of it. And I've done a few of those. I've been a storyteller on a few. I've hosted a few. They're the most amazing experience, whether you're in the audience or on the stage. You feel that there's something really important going on. There's something really organic, if you will, happening. And you think about it that, until a couple hundred years ago, almost everything we knew came from storytelling and the oral tradition. And our values, our taboos, our information, all of it, our religions, and that has stopped. And there is something to that experience of like, look me in the face and tell me something about you that we lack. And when we get it, it feels like nourishment. I mean, it just really does. And what I began to notice in my woodworking is that happens to me in the shop too. There's very few places in my life where I kind of turn off the tape that's running in our heads all the time and just sort of lose myself. And, where you look up and realize you forgot to eat, dinner, and it's 9:30 at night, and all you've been doing is, playing on a board or whatever you're up
And
to.
not thinking about it. I think sociologists tell us we're happiest when we can do things and not think a lot about it. It's what our brains really crave.
I think that's right. And I don't know, are you familiar with Richard Sennett's book, The Craftsman? He's like a
So
social.
you're
Go ahead.
like the 10th person in my circle have told me I have to read this, but I have not yet.
It's not a fun read. It's a very good, dense read. There are other memoirs that I enjoy as well. Glenn Adamson's things are very good. Also, Peter Korn's book, Why We Make Things and Why It Matters, covers a lot of that. This same ground, why crafts matter, why making things is important. And one of the things that Sennett points out, he uses the term homo faber, which is man as maker. And he points out that we develop the dexterity and muscle control with our hands long before we develop the same capabilities for speech, for complex speech. So we were making things eons before we were speaking. And so his premise is that we are only fully human when we are making things and when we are speaking, because that's the two things about the human race that are unique amongst animals, is that of course you can throw abstract reasoning in there, which would account for why we make things and why we talk about them. And I recognize that is true for me. I mean, and again, late in my life, it's sort of like, duh. I mean, I've written 7 books. I've been on countless radio programs. I've been at Carnegie Hall and performed twice. I've done a lot of really fun, cool things, and all of that just turns to vapor as soon as it's over. It's a happy memory, except for the books. They're a torment because every time I open a book, I just go, oh my God, I wish I could buy that back and write it over. But making things, woodworking in my case, is forever giving back to me.
And
I can still look at the thing I made 10 years ago and feel that what you were just describing, when a group of people stands around a raised frame and goes, wow, we did that.
And to help other folks have that same experience, you are a co-founder of HatchSpace in Brattleboro. Can you tell me about that? What was the impetus for that idea, and how did it come about, and who are the students, and what do they do there?
Well, the inspiration for it was exactly what we're talking about. My co-founder, Greg Goodman, has been a lifelong cabinet maker, very, very skilled craftsman and designer. And he thinks too much about it, like I do. And in fact, he's the one who gave me the Richard Sennett book when we first met. And we together wanted to share what we knew, and not just how to do it, but why to do it. And that's very important to me. It's one of the first speeches, if you will, that I give to any class that I teach is, first I ask, how many of you have aspirations to do this professionally? Almost nobody does. I said, so right now we have to decide why we would do anything less than perfect work. We've got all the time in the world to do it. Nobody is on the phone begging us to get it done. You don't have to make any money at it. Um, so why would we settle for less than perfection? Because if you do, every time you look at that piece of work, you're going to feel bad. You're going to feel some
Tell me
kind of
about it.
right. So don't do that. Just don't do that to yourself. I mean, if you just spent 2 weeks on this thing and at the end of it, you drag a saw across the top of it and screw it up, put a new top on it. Because if you don't, you're going to regret it. And you might as well just wasted those 2 weeks, playing video games or something, because you're going to get no more out of it.
Right.
And that's the way I feel about it. We also I don't give that same speech to the young people who come in. We do some classes specifically for young people. We have a build your own skateboard class that is really popular. We do it with the local Boys and Girls Club, where they vacuum press these layered veneer skateboards and they put the trucks on and they paint them up. And at the end of it, it's just not a board with wheels on. I mean, these are real deal skateboards. Like,
Cool.
they're something that they take down to the skate park then and show off.
Right.
And the idea being, again, what we're talking about, where somebody's going to say, wow, where'd you get that cool skateboard? And they get to say, I made it. That's the thing. And so, that's why we want to get them addicted young and early, so they can have the same miserable lives that we
I had the opportunity to talk to one of my old shop teachers on this program a few weeks ago, and he talked about how hands-on education like art and shop classes bring life experience and lifelong interest, sometimes a fulfilling career to students, right? I'm guessing you think that's true, hence your involvement with HatchSpace. What do you think what is that offering? You said it's that satisfaction of being able to show your friends. What else does that do? Is the success of the process? Is it learning that not everything comes with a screen or is that fast? Some things are a process and take some time.
I think yes, that of course. It's I think we live in a reactive time. I mean, obviously politically and in many other ways, but it's not unprecedented. If you look back to the arts and crafts movement of 100 to 150 years ago, that was a reaction to the industrial age and the sameness of consumer goods, and then the Gilded Age, which was like the over the top material stuff that was happening, and people just craved a sort of back to basics kind of design, furnishing, surroundings. And I think we're in that stage again. I think people are just craving a simpler mental state. I mean, it's difficult to.
Do your students articulate that? Can they? Do you think do they know why they want to take a wood shop class?
Some talk about it. Some are coming from other things. They're artists, but they want to try a new medium, some are like artists, but they want to do some of the ancillary things for themselves. They'd rather build their own plinth for their sculpture, or they'd rather frame their own painting. So there's some of that. But I think and I don't hit too many people over the head with this speech because you can over romanticize things and ruin it
Yeah,
for people. I mean,
some things don't need to be thought about, right?
exactly. I mean, simple is simple. And if it's giving you happiness and joy, who cares if you understand the term homophober? And you know, it really doesn't matter. And in terms of the young people, I think most of us, I got exposure through my dad, but I also, we had middle school, wood shop and metal shop. At my high school, we had everybody had to take drafting, machine shop, wood shop, home economics. Uh, there was a whole um, menu of trades that we all got a chance to sample before we had to make decisions about our lives. And I don't see that as much anymore. We do our local high school here has a career center, but even that not everybody has to take. It's very much optional. If there's a student who wants to, take building trades, he can do it. But a lot of kids who are determined that they're on a college track and they're going to be professionals or what have you, they don't even look at it. I mean, hell, when you're 16, are you right about anything?
No.
How can you
It's the
possibly
worst time to be making decisions about your life, right?
Yeah, yeah. And so, one of the nicest and saddest things we have in our shop are these two beautiful old Powermatic lathes that were given to us by the local middle school because they closed their wood shop. Um, and so that just made us more determined than ever to get young people into our shop, young people of that age. Don't wait until they're 16 to 18. Get them in when they're 12 and 14, and let them experience what we're talking about.
Wood turning is
Because,
so cool.
and if you want to just look at it practically, we are starved for tradespeople in this country. I mean, well, it's easier to get an audience with the Pope than to get a plumber to show up at your house right now, and more useful too. And I can say that as a Catholic, so forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. But the lack of it is not sustainable. And I read somewhere that the average age of a union carpenter in the United States is 58 years old right now. That's the
Plumbers
average
too.
age. That means
Plumbers
half of them
too.
are
Yeah.
older than that.
Yeah.
And young people just aren't interested. All my friends who are in the trades, who run their, either contracting businesses, or I've got a friend who's got an insulation company, they cannot find people to take those jobs. And they're good jobs. I mean, they pay as well as any jobs, and it's good hours. I mean, if you are a skilled carpenter or plumber or electrician, you can lead a good middle class lifestyle with that. You can go on vacations, you can have a house, you can, feed your family, you can have a bass boat behind the garage, all the stuff that all of our dads and stuff that we grew up with were able to do with their work, are available. But people aren't really thinking about it in those terms. They think, oh, working class jobs, that. And that's another part of the mission of HatchSpace, is to help. And I know it is also with the Timber Framers Guild, is to, get that, re-elevate, if you will, the status of the trades and the craft that goes into them. They are good jobs. They're jobs to be proud of, and you become an important person when you know how to do things. People, you become the go-to guy or woman when you know how to do this stuff, and you know compare that to middle management in some insurance company, and how many people are seeking out what you know.
On the subject, we recently heard from a millennial-aged Habitat for Humanity construction supervisor, and he said that he felt lucky to have found meaningful work that challenged him, and he has a direct effect on solving our nation's housing problem. But he wonders if the country's slogans like, we have a Taunton, keep craft alive, or bridge the skills gap, which is another one I hear. He wondered if the country was truly committed to, improving the opportunities for trades education and elevating the status of these folks who do these jobs, who are often looked upon, as you point out, as second-class citizens. What do you think about that?
Well, it depends on what you mean when you say country. If you mean government, I'd say that no, as a uh, you know
Nation.
as a nation, no, we are not doing it. Politically, there hasn't been the will to fund these programs or continue funding what was there. But I think as individuals and groups such as the Timber Framers Guild and HatchSpace and others, that yes, we get it. We want to do it. We need more of us doing it. So I think it's a yes no thing. I think as more of us in the trades um, crow about it and do our evangelical thing with programs like this, and there's good things happening. I mean, you look at, YouTube is saturated with the how-tos. Nick Offerman and Amy Poehler had that show about making things on I think it was called Making Things, wasn't
Mm-hmm.
it? For a while, and so there are some things happening that give you hope that this is um, this is starting to catch. But we could miss our moment. I mean, the window won't stay open forever.
We're already on the scary side of it, I would say. Like you just pointed out, tradespeople are not being replaced at the rate at which they're leaving the industry.
No, it's true, and it's very unfortunate that we have a workforce, skilled and unskilled, amassed on our southern border, just dying to come work, and we have no real method for getting that done. And there should be. I mean, that's been part of America from time immemorial. I mean, that's why the Irish came over. That's why the Italians were brought over, and particularly the skilled stone workers and all of that, the Chinese railway workers, and every time a labor force like that is imported because we don't have one ourselves, the entire country gets better for it.
And then
And
those folks buy houses and buy all the stuff that keeps the rest of it going, right?
right, and you know, I'm not to be political, but I mean, let's be practical. That we need legal means for these people to come to our country and work, or they're going to find illegal means to do it, and then that does not serve them well, does not serve us well, and it's just a matter, if we had the political will to make it happen, it's a simple thing. I don't know. One politician said it. We need a good wall with a big gate, and that's a nice. I don't think physically we need that, but metaphorically we do. We definitely need that. You think, like the Great Wall of China was not built to stop the alien horde from invading. It was built to get them to go through the gate so that they would pay their taxes and so that the Chinese knew who was in their country. That's why it was built. You notice there's a tower and a gate about every quarter mile on that thing.
This is kind of funny. I heard an interview you did with Luke Burbank, another NPR personality. You were talking about going to your favorite college English teacher, and you told him you were thinking of leaving school in search of experience as inspiration to be an author, right? A writer.
Right.
His answer surprised me. What did he tell you, and did it surprise you?
Well, it kind of did, because you go to your favorite teacher and mentor and say, "Hey, I'm thinking of dropping out of school. What do you think?" And he says, "Yeah, I think you probably should." That was a sobering moment. Not that I was sober, and uh, but it did give, I think to his point to me, and we've remained friends. until very recent years, where actually he's got kind of advanced dementia now. Otherwise, I've been in touch with Al Drake my entire life. Uh, he he agreed that I was never going to be another Hemingway, but he thought maybe I could, maybe be another um, something less. He was interviewed by People magazine um, when one of my early books came out. They sought him out and asked what he thought of my work, and he said, "Well, Tom appeals to the kind of people who maybe don't read very much," which was pretty accurate. I got better.
Do you regret leaving school ever?
Yes. Yes,
Yeah.
I do. I've been an autodidact all my life. I've always been a voracious reader, and I read constantly.
You're an
To the
accomplished person. What is missing that you didn't go to college from your life? I don't understand.
the discussion,
Oh,
the challenging of assumptions, the both incoming and outgoing. I When I find myself, and I often do because I work with NPR and I'm around a lot of very smart, well-educated people, that there's a matrix of intellect that I recognize in them that I do not have, um, of how various schools of thought have connected up and crystallized for them, which never, and maybe I just got brain damage, but I, I would prefer to think that I would have probably got that my junior, senior year
yeah. Well,
in college.
and looking back, that's what I value the most of it was those professors who taught me to think more than skills or that's a gift for somebody for sure.
Yes, yes, it is, and I think that there's no bad information. You should learn everything you can all the time. You never know what is going to serve you down the line. It's like I've never met a carpenter or woodworker who wasn't a hoarder, and you've got those two boards out behind the barn that you just know are going to be useful someday.
And you got a
Or
coffee can of weird screws and it's all that weird stuff, right?
everything, like a piece of flashing, like you have that point. If it's 3 feet or shorter, it goes in the dumpster. But 4 feet, you could probably use that some. So we've all got that huge pile of stuff scattered around our house. And the thing is that it is you use it. You use it. That's one of my favorite things to do is go scavenging down in my shop and out behind the barn for the thing I need because I know
Especially if
I
it
have
saves
it.
a trip to the hardware store, the home center,
Exactly.
or whatever.
Oh, right. There's nothing worse than going to the lumberyard, paying too much for a board, and then 2 weeks later you find the board that you already had.
I talked to many of my Pro Talk guests about the toll, the physical toll, and maybe the psychological toll that trade work takes on our bodies. Do you have any health problems or hearing loss or any of the other things that go along with being a carpenter or a woodworker?
Um, well, the feet, the knees, the hips, the back, of course, no feeling in two fingers.
Do you have all your
Uh,
digits?
yes, but one of them's numb. Um, yeah, no, not much really. Just pretty much constant pain. How about you?
Back pain, hearing loss. The hearing loss, I don't know if that was from listening to AC/DC in the car as a teen or if it was from the power tools, but probably it's a combination of the two, if I had to guess.
Yeah, I've got the hearing loss too. It's a constant source of discussion. Thank God I can't hear her between my wife and I. Um, Did you know that, the range of hearing that men lose first is the range of a woman's voice?
Yeah, and they lose the other parts of their hearing, right? I
I
think
think
that's
this
how marital bliss happens after your 50s, right?
I think it's evolution and action there. It's what keeps these old couples apart so they could raise their grandchildren. Um, and but I I wish I could go back to my 20-year-old self and grab me by the neck and shake me and say, "Put on your freaking headphones and wear a mask," because you just didn't do those things.
It was not macho, right? It was just,
No, it would be like if a guy came to the website and put on a hearing protection, it would be, "What's with him?" Right? Safety glasses, come on, unless you were like actually grinding metal, what are you wearing safety glasses for? And it was just that mentality. And I remember climbing around underneath these docks with penta and creosote in these 5-gallon buckets and with a big 4-knot brush spraying it on, no mask, no gloves, no that, and so why I don't have tumors growing out of every orifice, I have no idea. Just dodge that so far. I'm not dead yet, though.
I would tell folks out there to have the younger crew members or your, kids wear the gear because it is important because all of us have problems later from bad behavior.
Yes, we do.
What do
And
you what about your own house? Do you have any problems you're ignoring? Anything on the wish list from the family that you're not done?
That's a very personal question, Patrick. None that I'm ignoring. In my mind, I have a schedule, and so there's things I haven't gotten to yet. I have it's a big house, and it's got, and the barn and studio and all that is built onto it, so it's a big place, and it's surrounded by my wife's gardens and fences and all of this stuff. So it's like painting the Golden Gate Bridge. I get to one end and I start on the other. I mean, I built most all of this here, and I'm now replacing rot. So there you go. I mean, it's like that's once you get to that where you're in the rot cycle of your own work, then you realize that I don't know, life is cyclical. It's
Rot
and you're
happens to
never
all of
going
us.
to be done. You're never going to finish. That's it.
What can folks do to help HatchSpace? How can they learn more about it? Where can they send money? What can they do to help?
Oh, thanks for asking. Well, hatchspace.org, easy enough. Yeah, check it out, see what we're about. And if you're anywhere in the area, we would love to have you come by and look at us for membership or what have you. If you're not in the area, but you love what we've been talking about and that, we really appreciate any help you can get. We are a 501c3, and all the contributions are tax deductible. And yeah, thanks for that.
Yeah, sure. Anything else you want to tell or ask our listeners before we part company?
Keep your fingers out of the saw blade, and remember, it's always the last thing you cut. Like you've got 20 parts to run through the table saw. It's going to be the last one because you already got your mind out the door. That's what every accident I've ever had has been on that piece, on one way, shape,
When you're
or
almost
form.
done.
When you're almost done and you're already moving on to your beer or your sandwich or the next phase. So pay attention all the way to the end. I've gotten in the habit actually of stopping about 5 pieces short of finishing when I'm in a mode like that, taking a breath, taking a drink of water, and then finishing up just to refocus it. And I found that since I've been north of 60, my reflexes aren't what they used to be, and I'm not snatching my hand back as from peril like I used to. So I'm.
Do you have a saw stop? Do you? No.
Not in my shop. We do. We have them down at the HatchSpace shop. But I'm actually thinking it may be time for that.
I think it may be time.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's my parting advice. And also go make something, get out in your shop, do it, or get out in somebody else's shop. It's good for the soul. It's good for all of us.
Very true. Well, unfortunately, that is all the time we have today. Tom, thanks very much for being on the show. And thanks to all of you for listening. Please remember to send us your comments, questions, and suggestions to fhbpodcast@taunton.com. And please like, comment, or review us. However you're listening, it helps other folks find our podcast. Stay safe, everybody. Keep craft alive. Keep your fingers. Tom Bodett, thank you very much.
Thanks, Patrick.
Take care, everyone.